Namaste. A very good morning to all of you. It's my pleasure to be here at the Sikkim Judicial Academy uh, and also speak about an issue which is very close to my heart and the work I do. Uh, I'm thankful to the Judicial Academy for inviting me for this session. Um, as the director has already said, that human trafficking is an increasing crime. It's happening everywhere. Though since I work a lot with various law enforcement agencies, I do know that Sikkim, being a small state, has reported certain cases of missing children and certain cases of human trafficking. Sporadically, it is being reported, but the numbers are very less. So it's good thing that traffickers are not identifying children and women from this region. But as you know, that human trafficking being an organized crime, and if plugs are put in one place, they find out other places. So since these people who indulge in human trafficking are already getting are trafficking girls, especially from Assam, Northeast India, Manipur, all of these places, West Bengal. So Sikkim has largely been untouched, but low numbers does not mean that we should we should not focus on prevention efforts and making our young children aware of the crime. During the COVID pandemic, when the country was hit with pandemic and children started being online, classes were being made online, Kailash Satyarthi Children Foundation did a study, and as well as other UN agencies across the world, even the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the study for which I was also a part, we did studies on the rise of online crimes against children during the pandemic, and we have had several hundreds of cases where young girls befriended strangers on online medium, and they were they befriended, and some of them were sexually harassed, some of them had their images all over the internet, some of them were sent tickets by the traffickers and they could travel to different locations. So COVID pandemic brought out this danger of online sexual exploitation of children. And in online sexual exploitation, the crime is improving, is increasing day by day. Different forms of crimes are happening in the online medium. So one of the key focus areas for especially like a state like Sikkim, where people are affluent and there are people, so there is a lot of young people here. So we need to also educate and reach out to all our universities, schools for safe online behavior, so that traffickers and exploiters may not get in touch with our children, because most parents are happily providing children these mobile phones and all of this, and most children are in social media. Though as as adults, we only know 2-3 social media like Instagram, Twitter or Facebook. But these young people have so many, other platforms which we don't know, which parents don't know. And we don't realize that while we are sleeping in one room, the trafficker is talking to the children in the other room in the night. So we really need to educate, and when we see the increase of child sexual abuse material and these sextortions which are happening, sexual harassment which is happening, it is a big emerging crime. It's a very dangerous situation. We have seen many young kids losing their life just because their images and were circulated and all of that. So this is also an emerging crime, the online issues connected to children. So that is one thing which we in Sikkim, we can really do prevention efforts in our schools and colleges. But let me come back to the issue of human trafficking. And as you know, the people do say that human trafficking happens due to poverty, human trafficking happens due to various other reasons. But in my work of more than 5,000 to 6,000 cases in the last 20 years, and undertaking several hundreds of rescue operations with law enforcement agencies, and dealing with lot of crimes of prostitution, child labor, bonded labor, we find that it is a crime which is organized in nature, and no one becomes a trafficker. They are all part of a big network. So it becomes, so I would request that when judicial officers, when prosecutors, when law enforcement officers, or people in the social welfare department, or people looking after shelter homes, or people looking, after rehabilitations of victims, we need to understand the organized nature of the crime. It is not some individual, but it is a series of people who are involved. So that is something which we need to understand. But I would really like to, to bring home the point as to human trafficking, because we got the penal provision on human trafficking in 2013. In the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, first time the definition of human trafficking was included in our law books. Before that, law enforcement officers would say that, sir, this is a case of child labor, this is not trafficking. Or law enforcement would say that, we would say that, sir, it is a case of human trafficking, but the SHO would say that, no, it is case of bonded labor, or it is case of domestic maid, or it is a case of, we would say that it is a case of prostitution, but the police would say, no, the person is married to the other person, and therefore it is marriages. So there was a lot of ambiguity in understanding the issue of human trafficking by law enforcement agencies. And when you don't have the crime in the law books, especially in the Indian Penal Code, then police will not identify that crime. But thankfully, due to Justice Verma Commission report in 2013, we got the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013, which brought the crime of Section 370 Indian Penal Code, which is drafted as per the UN Protocol on Human Trafficking, ratified by India in 2011. So India first ratified the UN Protocol in 2011, and human trafficking definition was included from there. And if we read this definition on human trafficking, you can really see the organized nature of the crime, which is reflected in the penal provision. But before I go into Section 370 Indian Penal Code, there have been several other legislations also. And mostly, before 2013, law enforcement agencies would identify human trafficking through the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act. That was the only thing which they knew, and they thought that mostly human trafficking is sex trafficking. And because there was no law, so law enforcement and even in their police academies, they were taught that this on trafficking, it is the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act. So the law enforcement major focus continued to be on sex trafficking. And sex trafficking is something which all of us can oppose. All of us are serious in that. And even the society takes a very hard view on that, and it should not happen. But human trafficking is not only about sex trafficking. It is also about labor trafficking. It is also about bonded labor. It is also about child labor. So labor issues don't get the attention which sex trafficking issue gets. People think that, oh, the person is a poor person, so he is going into for job, so might be he is getting lower salaries, so no problem what, but it is not exploitation. So people, police as well as society in general, think of labor issues as softer issues of human trafficking. But the amount of exploitation is the same in cases of labor trafficking. I remember, appearing in a trial court in 10-12 years back, and the PP said कि sir ये तो child labor का मामला है. It is a general thing. It's a child labor का मामला है. वो गरीब बच्चे हैं, काम करने आ गए. ये तो बच्चे हैं, काम करने आ गए, इनको रिहेबिलिटेशन के लिए भेज देते हैं और कोई तो so that is the level of thought people have in terms of labor trafficking, and therefore I would really like all of you to understand the ramification of forced labor and exploitation, and also the cases of labor trafficking. So one of the actionable points, or one of the key things which we need to remember, is that sex trafficking, human trafficking, is not only about sex trafficking, it is also about labor, child labor, bonded labor, forced marriages, all the issues connected with exploitation. You will find ingredients of human trafficking. Though it took the country more than 60 years to get penal provisions on human trafficking, 370 IPC को लाने में 60 years लगा, but our constitution, and people who are students of law know that our constitution in Article 23 clearly, talks about prevention, talks about banning of begar, human trafficking and forced labor. These three words are included in Article 23 of the Constitution. Article 24 talks about no children should be below the age of 14 should be made to work in labor. So constitution makers had that learning to include these two offenses in the Constitution. And human trafficking and begar is the only crime which is mentioned in the Constitution document. So you can imagine that our lawmakers, our constitution makers had that, had that understanding that it violates basic dignity and basic human rights, and therefore at that time they included it in the Constitution document, and you can see this in Article 23 and 24. And the understanding they had on this crime can be gauged by looking at where it is placed. They place these two sections in the Fundamental Rights chapter, which is heart and soul of the Constitution. So you can imagine that people during those times, about 75 years back, they had that understanding and learning to include this as the only crime in the Constitution document, and putting it in the heart and soul of Constitution, the Fundamental Rights chapter, which guarantees each person their dignity and fundamental right. So the level of placement of this crime in the Constitution also is very important for all of us as government officers, as judicial officers. Human trafficking is violation of fundamental rights of an individual, and therefore as government agencies, as people representing the state, we need to ensure that anyone being a victim of human trafficking, the state should provide all support. Because it is a violation of fundamental right, the state is liable to provide compensation, the state is liable to provide that person the dignity, and state is liable also to prevent that crime. And that brings home the point as to why the Ministry of Home Affairs across the country, across various judicial academies, across police academies, they are holding these colloquiums, training sessions, because it is a violation of basic fundamental right. If I say, if I am talking about human trafficking, you may think that, okay, I'm talking about, legal provisions or a crime which has exploitation. But to bring home the point of the amount of suffering which families face if their children are trafficked, just imagine your loved children to go missing for half an hour in a mall or in a school. And you will realize what is human trafficking. When children go missing and you can't find them, that is the pain which people and families whose children are trafficked, who are kidnapped, who are exploited, go through. तो ये चीज़ आपको तुरंत समझ आ जाएगा कि जो पेन है ट्रैफिकिंग का, जो मिसिंग चिल्ड्रन का, you will at once realize that how serious this crime is. If you just imagine for 1 minute or 10 minutes your child going missing, and you will understand. So it is a crime which sells our children, in which human beings are sold and purchased. It is the third largest money spinning business according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes. First is arms, second is drugs, and third is human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. If there are law enforcement officers who work in the cyber police department, and if you do investigations on the dark web and the deep web, you will find out the amount of child sexual abuse materials being traded on the internet. It's the third largest money spinning business, exploitation of women and children and human beings. People are purchased, sold, and this is a crime which does not happen in foreign countries but also happens in India. So this is the general, outlook as to the crime which is happening on human trafficking. India has huge numbers of missing children. And what happened was that NHRC did a study in 2007 on human trafficking. 2004, Dr. P.M. Nair, an IPS officer, did this national level study, and for the first time he came out with a figure that 46,000 children were missing, as much the data he could collect from different police stations across the country. And in that data, he found out that almost 38,000 children continued to remain missing. So that was the term he used in that national studies, that children continue to remain missing was also huge numbers. So that study came out in 2005. The government did take a notice of the things, but did not do anything. And they just started studying and thinking about what changes could be made. In 2007, due to that study, they set up a committee to amend the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act. I was part of that committee, but things did not go ahead. Then in 2007, some of you may remember a crime which happened in a UP police station called the Nithari case. Some of the police officers or some of the people who do read these things may be knowing the Nithari case, where the one person had, kidnapped several of these girls, killed them, murdered them, cut their bodies into pieces and put them into refrigerator, was eating that. The person, Mr. Pandher and Surinder Kohli, got they are facing death penalty. So that crime has been investigated. But people were shocked with the Nithari case. And especially the young law students, you can also look into that case. One police station was reporting several missing cases in that jurisdiction. And that SHO and that police officers, what they were doing is, okay, your girl child has gone missing, so we're just filing this case as routine matters and just putting it in the files. That a missing persons report was mandated, and they were doing it routinely. They were not realizing that there is a pattern emerging. In the 6-7 months, there is a pattern emerging, and many children are going missing in this region. No one took notice of that. But after the house was raided, they found out many skeletons which were dumped in the nala besides the house. So Nithari case brought in a huge, exposure on the issue of missing children and how police dealt with the cases of missing children. So the government realized that missing persons report were published and nothing was happening. There was no FIR mandated at that time. I remember appearing in front, and after the Nithari case, the Ministry of Women and Child did a study and found out that 42 children had gone missing from that police station jurisdiction in 1 year time. So law enforcement did not recognize the pattern, and the crime was occurring and recurring, and they were not investigating. So that brought in big focus on the issue of missing children after the NHRC again did a study on the Nithari case, and they found out. So in 2010, I filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court and citing various cases of missing children, and I requested in the PIL, I requested the Honorable Court to order that in cases of missing children, FIR should be registered. But unluckily, in 2010, appearing before the CJI bench at that time, Justice Balakrishnan was there. But at that time, the court did not entertain my petition, my PIL, and it was just, junked, and though Mr. Senior Advocate Raju Ramachandran appeared, and we did argue a lot, but the court said that there is no provision in the CRPC to register FIR against missing persons, or if there is no accused, there is no provision, and the PIL was not accepted. But after my PIL was not accepted, another organization filed the petition Bachpan Bachao Andolan. They filed it in 2011, and a landmark judgment came out in 2013, Bachpan Bachao Andolan versus Union of India, which mandated Justice Altamas Kabir was the then CJI, and he had worked a lot with children. His wife Meena Kabir was a child rights activist, and things were, sometimes things happen in such a way that you get this landmark judgment. So Justice Altamas Kabir said that if children go missing, and these are minors, there is someone who is making them missing, and states have to file FIR. Many states refused to do so. Their DGPs were called and they were asked, and in 2013, we got this landmark judgment on missing children, stating that every police station should register an FIR. Just imagine that children were going missing across the country and law enforcement was not registering the cases. But after the Supreme Court judgment, the missing children across the country are now getting registered. And you will see that sometimes, data helps. In the first few years, police stations started registering and the number shot up to 1,26,000. And then it also increased. And now the government of India was getting a clear picture as to what the number of children who continue to remain missing, especially the girls. The girl child number was huge in the 126 figure. Almost 78% was girl child. And if girl child has gone missing and is not being found, you can imagine where these girls have gone. Mostly they must have been, kidnapped and sent to brothels and various sex trafficking places. So The missing children land judgment is a landmark judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, because if a child goes missing in Duars in Jalpaiguri now, today, an FIR will be registered. And that FIR, when the child is found out, the case becomes very strong, because already a kidnapping and abduction case was registered in Jalpaiguri today. If after 6 months the girl is found out from a brothel or from a placement agency or in a forced marriage situation, the law office enforcement of Jalpaiguri will do the investigation and they will investigate the whole crime. So earlier children, after being rescued, could deny. They became adults. They said that nothing happened to me, I was exploited. They could not find out, and the law enforcement just could not match the crime, because earlier no FIR was registered. So if today FIR are registered and the child is found out after 7 years, still the crime can be investigated and we can get, we can get hold of all these people who are accused. So it's a landmark judgment which has really helped in bringing interstate investigations in crime of human trafficking. A child of Jalpaiguri, if missing about 10 years ago or 7 years ago, found out today in a trafficking situation in Mumbai, the police will register a case there, and of course there is a trafficking missing case here. So both the law enforcement have to work together on these cases, and therefore I think that it was a game changer judgment in Bachpan Bachao Andolan versus Union of India, which made this crime getting registered. And now government also has clear picture as to the number of children who are getting trafficked, because every year India registers more than 70,000 children who just go missing, and almost 80% are never found out. And these are in many states. The state of West Bengal, which is nearby you, reports the highest number of missing children, especially from the South 24 Parganas, North 24, Duars areas, Malda, Dinajpur, all the bordering areas. Lot of children go missing and they are never found out. So that is also important, I think, which has strengthened the fight on human trafficking. So I have discussed the issue of the magnitude of the crime. I have discussed the issue of missing children and how it connects human trafficking. And also I'll tell you, in terms of missing children, we work a lot with children of parents of missing children. I founded an organization called Shakti Vahini in 2001, and Shakti Vahini is now one of the leading organizations working on anti-human trafficking across the country. It is involved in a lot of rescue operations across the country. Presently, I work with the Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi and Bachpan Bachao Andolan as the India head. I'm part of their foundation. And we are also getting a huge, snapshot on as to the work which is happening on anti-trafficking. But our experiences of parents of missing children is that, these parents say that, साहब आप हमको इस बच्चे का डेड बॉडी ला दीजिए, हमारी लड़की का अगर डेड बॉडी मिल जाएगा तब भी काम चल जाएगा. But if it is missing, it is a huge trauma, because every time I eat food, I remember my young daughter. Where is she? Where is she being exploited? Who is exploiting her? So that is the pain and trauma the parents of missing children face. And we have had few missing children cases from Sikkim also. We had collaborated in few cases with the anti-human trafficking unit when Inspector Yankila, I don't remember her name, was there. So she was there and in the anti-human trafficking unit, and we had investigated. But that is the pain of the parents of missing children, and therefore, as I said, that we are all here because the Constitution says that it is violation of human rights, fundamental rights. It is our duty to help these children and families. So in this introductory remark which I have given you on missing children, on the figures on human trafficking, I would now like to go into the definition of human trafficking as you know, as drafted by the UN as well as now part of our anti-human trafficking unit. It's a very, I don't think that there is any IPC provision in the entire IPC law book which is so well drafted as is 370 IPC. I told that human trafficking is an organized crime. When I told that human trafficking is an organized crime, and I would really like our law enforcement officers, जो हमारे पुलिस के साथी हैं, आप लोग जरा इसको ध्यान से पढ़िए इस कानून को, क्योंकि देखिए जब when you do investigations in this crime, also the public prosecutors, the judicial officers, if you see the definition, you see in the first few lines you see the organized crime. Whoever, for the purpose of exploitation, recruits, transports, harbors, transfers, receives. So, the first definition of human trafficking बोलता है कि अगर human trafficking is whoever for the purpose of exploitation recruits, so there is a recruiter, transports, there will be a transporter, there will be an harborer, there will be someone who transfers the children, there is someone who is receiving the children. So the first line itself shows the organized nature of the crime, because children just can't go missing, or a young college girl cannot be kidnapped just out of the thin air. There is someone who is inducing her, there is someone who is identifying that child, there is someone who is trying to recruit the child in a rural area of any part of the country. Children just don't go missing. There is a recruiter there out in the villages who is roaming around and doing the recruitment. There are people, once the child is recruited, lured, or a young person, an adult of like 19 to 35, 25, luring a young girl in a false love affair and saying that let's run away to a different part of the country. Let's run away to Delhi. There is a recruiter who is roaming around in the village. And let me tell you, recruiters are not someone who come from outside. Recruiters are people who are from the community. Almost 99% are from within the community. So the recruiter is someone who is inside the village. And that person, because I can't come and traffic a person from Sikkim. As soon as I enter a village, they will find out a stranger is roaming here. The elders will question, who are you? Why are you here? But no one will question an insider. So a recruiter is a person who is within the community, deeply entrenched, and he is indulging in cases of luring and recruiting the victim. There are people, once the victim is recruited, there are people who are experts in transporting the child. Sometimes children are recruited in groups, especially from the Kishanganj and all these places which are nearby, Bagdogra, where a lot of young children are recruited in groups. So once they are recruited by false promises, lurement, then they are transported. Might be from the village to Shiliguri, from Shiliguri to railway station in New Jalpaiguri. SSB works a lot in Duars areas and in these border areas. Every alternate day they find out some child roaming in there or with a stranger. Lot of the RPF, the Railway Police Force, works in the railway stations, and they find out sometimes these children getting recruited. If a good police officer is involved, sometimes they are prevented then and there only. But there are people who are experts in transporting children. If the police will come to them, they know how to deal with them. And many of them are very frequent in those railroads. They know the people who do the catering, they know all the people, so all the people they know, and it is very easy for them to recruit the child and take that children to Delhi. If I or you recruit two young children and take them in a railway, you will always be, fearful that someone may find out. These are not fearful. They know everyone, therefore they remain very quiet and they just are experts in transporting children. These children, once they reach Delhi, after taking such a long journey, they will reach Delhi and they are handed over to the other person. The transporter handles the child to the other person, or some young person or some adult who has recruited the child by love affair will bring the girl till Delhi, and from there he will say in the railway station that you remain here for few time. My relative is coming, you can go with my relative and I will come after doing some work. So the traffickers, so this person, the transporter, knows the traffickers in Delhi. So they exchange telephone messages, and then the child is handed over to the exploiter. These people then purchase the child, pay a sizable amount. Presently, the figures for trafficking a girl child is 2 to 5 lakh rupees. So the person who is in the rural area, the transporter, receives that 5 lakhs or 2 lakh rupees from the trafficker in Delhi. The trafficker is handed over to the other person. Then this person recruits this child and then exploits the child, rapes the child, and blackmails the child to such an extent that she breaks down and she or he may be induced in cases of prostitution, because almost 50% of the trafficking cases happens on prostitution. So they are recruited, they may be made to do nude shows, they may be do strips in front of the internet, they may be used to prostitution in brothels. So this happens. Why I am describing you this entire journey is because when Sikkim police will do the investigation, or Delhi police, after this child has been missing for many days, after 2 years Delhi police rescues the child from the brothel. The Delhi police will register a case of minor being in a brothel, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, ITPA, POCSO, and a few other sections of the IPC and JJ Act against the trafficker in Delhi. If Delhi police rescues that child, they will have these cases against the trafficker. And against whom these cases will be registered? Someone who is a rented person in that brothel to face these charges, who have no identification, nothing. After some time, these accused persons get bail and they just disappear. They are never found out. And the police never, catch hold of the person who owns the brothel. So some inconsequential person will be arrested, the child will be rescued, sent to a shelter home, and after some time Sikkim police will be informed and they will come and collect the child and go back and say that my missing child is now found out. And Delhi police is investigating the crime of prostitution which happened there. After that, those accused are never found out. The young girl is not able to, and neither the Delhi police is interested, because if the Delhi police is interested in during counseling, they should ask the question: who recruited you, who exploited you in Siliguri, who transported you, who brought you to Delhi, and who were the persons who were exploiting you here? The girl will never know, because she was handed over to various strangers and she will never know. And since she never knows, no police agency will investigate the recruiter, the transporter, the harborer. All these three people will never be investigated. Delhi police will not ask this question because they will, this happens with all destination police. They will not ask this question. Why? Because they will have to go to investigate in Sikkim, Siliguri, all of these places. They just leave that thing out. So, in the fight of human trafficking, traffickers know how unorganized we are. Traffickers know that law enforcement will never look and investigate the entire chain of traffickers. They don't know. So the recruiter, the transporter know that they will never be caught, and they continue to do that crime after crime and crime after crime. And you'll be surprised, in brothels across the country, every day young kids are being brought. In spite of the good work being done by law enforcement, there are very good police officers who are doing extremely good work. Still, these children continue to pour in from different parts of the country in these brothels, in these spas, these massage parlors, all of these places. Why? Because traffickers know that law enforcement will never investigate. Because traffickers know that judicial officers will never ask the IO as to why you have not investigated the entire chain of traffickers. Because whatever the charge sheet, the court decides on the charge sheet. And no one cares. So, these people are very organized, and they know, and therefore we get single digit figures in conviction rates in human trafficking. So, why I have discussed is, as a police officer, please investigate the entire chain of traffickers. As a prosecutor, ask the IO why you have not investigated the people who have trafficked this child. As a judicial officer, when you get this charge sheet, go through the charge sheet and ask the IO why you have not investigated. I don't find the entire chain of traffickers, they are missing. Because once a judicial officer asks the IO will get afraid the next time when he files a charge sheet. So we need to ask questions, and we need to investigate the entire chain of traffickers. So I think tea is there, and we can have some, I'll just take 5 minutes.
Yes.
And then you can, please, you all can have tea. I will also have my tea.
Yes.
Thank you. So as I was discussing human trafficking, 370 Indian Penal Code, so we discussed the first 3 lines of the section, and that has given a clear picture as to human trafficking being an organized crime. I hope that there is no doubt amongst the participants that the nature of the crime which human trafficking victims and the traffickers are. So whoever for the purpose of exploitation. So exploitation is the heart and soul of this section. You have to really, law enforcement officers, when they do investigation in this crime, have to investigate all these people who are recruiter, harborer, transporters, as well as also to investigate the exploitation which has happened on the child. And I'll come to the use of exploitation. Whoever uses for force or any form of coercion. So how victims are trafficked? This was the nature of traffickers, the first few lines. Now these 5 things: using force or any other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, inducement, including the giving or receiving of payments or benefit in order to achieve the consent of any person having control over the recruited, transported, harbored, transferred or received commits the offense of human trafficking. So, how victims are trafficked? can be by force, that is kidnapping, or by coercion, by abduction, by practicing fraud. Fraud means someone is told that we are going to provide your child a job in Delhi in the hotel industry, and that person sends her child or his child, and that person and the child, when she reaches there, she is forced into the spa services where prostitution is happening. So the child, the victim or the parent, when they were being sent from here, they were of the opinion that my child is going to get a good job. Once she lands there, she is trafficked. So this is fraud or deception. A young girl is told by her so-called lover here in Sikkim or in Jalpaiguri or Siliguri that let's run away and marry in Delhi. So the girl, when she is going with the person, she is of the opinion that I am going to marry and settle. So she is being decepted. Deception is happening. When she reaches there, the boy sets up her in a hotel for a long time, for 7, 8, 10 days, till he is able to find the best price for the girl, and then the girl is handed over to the traffickers. So, lurement, fraud, deception has taken place. So that is the meaning of fraud. In many cases of human smuggling, you must have read about how people from Haryana, Punjab, and many of the northeastern states are going to the United States through the services of these human smugglers who take them first to Africa, then the entire trekking in Africa, they land up in somewhere in South America, then they do the trek to the Mexico border. From Mexico border, they are made to forcefully, in the night, they are made to cross the US border. Sometimes they are killed, sometimes they die due to the exhaustion which happens. So, human smuggling also is part of human trafficking. And here the only thing is that the victim is with his own willingness. In terms of human smuggling, the difference between human trafficking and human smuggling is, in smuggling, the victim himself or herself volunteers to pay money for taking her to different locations. So in all these cases of people going to recently you must have read about a case, a Gujarati couple were killed in the icelands of Canada because they were crossing the border and no one was there to help them, and there was a lot of snowfall and they died there. So, and during the pandemic, the US government sent four plane loads of people who were all caught in the Mexico border, who were all Indians from these places. So in human smuggling also, these travel agents and these agents lure and deceive people. So that is what is fraud, deception. And in cases, why it is written here is, in cases after cases in prostitution, when we would rescue these girls from West Bengal after they were in the brothel for like 7 months, 8 months, till they were rescued. When these girls used to come to depose before the court, the trafficker, the defense would always say that the girl had come with her own will. The girl had eloped with him. And this is not a case of human trafficking. We had a fight amongst ourselves, and therefore today the victim is talking about that and she is alleging human trafficking. It is not like that. We fell in love, she came to Delhi, we stayed together, and the defense would cross-examine the victim in those cases and ask the victim, did you run away with your own choice? The victim would say yes. Did you take the train to NJP? Yes. From NJP to Delhi you came on your own free will. The victim would say yes. Did you stay in a hotel in Paharganj? The victim will say yes. For how many days? For 15 days. Did you have sexual encounters? Yes. Out of your own choice? Yes. So the defense would turn to the court and say that where is trafficking? It was all consentful. So that is why all these words have been put here, to make it sure that lurement and deception and fraud are all ingredients of human trafficking. And human trafficking is a continuing offense. A child may be taken from Siliguri and trafficking may happen in Bangalore. So it's a continuing offense and it continues in source, transit and destination. Source areas are those places from where victims are sourced. Destination are those places where victims are exploited. Transit areas are those in which victims are made to travel. So exploitation sometimes happens during transit also and also at the destination. So all these things have been put here to let the law enforcement know that how victims are transported and trafficked, so that law enforcement does not have any second opinion, because of course the victim may have gone with consent, but the trafficking happened when money was exchanged in Delhi and she was handed over to the brothel. But the crime started here only because the person was luring her, decepted her and said that, committed fraud upon her and said that I will take you to marry. So it's a very complex thing which happens in courts. In all these charge sheets, a lot of complexities happen and there is always, these are complex issues and the defense always claims that it is consent and the victim says that I was exploited. So earlier we could never secure convictions in these cases, because when the defense took a very hard stand that it was exploitation, the victim would get, it was consentful behavior, the victims would get, that they would get nervous and they could not say anything and it would all be turned into nothing. So that is why the next line has been included. To explanation, and I said that 370 of the Indian Penal Code is very well drafted, because explanation 1 talks about exploitation. I told exploitation is what you need to investigate. The law enforcement needs to investigate. When they investigate a case of missing child or a trafficked person, they should find out and bring out the exploitation. So when I talk about exploitation is something which has no legal meaning. It is only dictionary meaning. Exploitation is a general word actually, and therefore Justice Verma, while deliberating in that Nirbhaya case commission which had happened, Justice Verma had deliberated and pondered over this, and they included, and we had deposed before him that many of these cases turn out in acquittals because defense always claims that it was consentful, by the child. So therefore, and sometimes law enforcement also would confuse that it is only sex trafficking and no physical exploitation, and so law enforcement used to understand sex trafficking. Every one of us here will get serious if there is a sexual exploitation. We understand that crime. But other forms of exploitation, law enforcement would not think that it is serious, because even police officers are from other general society. They are the same people, and they would say that it is the poor child who has gone. So we had this section, this explanation was included. The term exploitation shall mean any act of physical exploitation, मतलब रख करके उसकी पिटाई हुई हो, उससे काम कराया जा रहा हो, that is physical exploitation. So in cases of physical exploitation, children who have been trafficked into domestic servitude and domestic maids in Delhi and in other places, this will become physical exploitation. If it's case of children, child labor, lot of children in groups are taken to various places for child labor, in brick lanes, in bangle industry, in forging industry, in different places. So all these children have to go through exploitation. So if children have been from one place to another, they have been, and their lawful guardian is not there, they are made into child labor, they are being exploited in those industries. So child labor law included with JJ Act and then section 370 of the Indian Penal Code will be a very strong case against the traffickers. And you know, I'll tell you, since the last 7-8 years, in child labor cases in Rajasthan, there's a lot of, jadi work which happens in Rajasthan, in the clothes, saris and all of that. And police are now using 370 IPC in child labor cases. And fear is being created. A legal deterrent is being created. I'll give you an example of what is a legal deterrent. No one was talking about child marriage. People think it is a social acceptable crime. People think that no one knows about Child Marriage Prohibition Act. No one knows. It is somewhere in the law books, we always think. But a strong action of Hemanta Biswa government in Assam has brought back child marriage into the central agenda, union agenda. How? 4,000 people have been arrested, you must have read in newspaper, for child marriage cases. Last week, in the last week of in January and starting of February, they have arrested so many people and the case went to High Court. But when 4,000 people were, arrested, suddenly the issue of child marriage caught everyone's attention because the fear of the law came. Legal deterrence is that, which means that people should understand that the law can mean action. And in all these cases of like child marriage, the law is very simple, people don't care about it. But if the law is being implemented, everyone has now woken up and CMPOs are being appointed across the country and legal deterrence and recently, just 3 days back, the Union Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani announced that we should have 0 child marriages in the coming 5 years. That should be the target. And many people are questioning, but I feel that if legal deterrence can be created, there will be fear of the law. Society, accepts these crimes because they know the police will not take action. But if the law enforcement start taking action, there will be legal deterrence. So, in terms of physical exploitation, 370 can be included. Sexual exploitation, we all understand. Any law enforcement officer is ready to file these cases. Slavery or practices similar to servitude, in cases of maids, domestic maids, 370 IPC should be included if the child has been exploited. And I will show you a recent case in which just 10 days back this case happened, and today the child has been sent to her village and now she is there in the hospital, but I'll I'll talk about that case. So, slavery or practices similar to slavery, servitude, and forced removal of organs. Forced removal of organs. So, exploitation has been now defined for the police. You should find out exploitation from this section, this explanation. It is physical exploitation, sexual exploitation, slavery, servitude, and removal of organs. In many cases, especially from the Duars areas, we are getting lot of cases of kidney racket. I'll give you a case study. Few years back, it was like just before the pandemic, 2017-18. Young couple was found arguing in front of Indraprasth Apollo Hospital in Delhi. And they were from this region, Siliguri region. And the couple was, fighting like anything. So few people brought the constable who was there. And that constable was very, a bright person, and he could, he intervened and said that, क्यों लड़ रहे हो भाई आप लोग? Why are you fighting? दोनों husband wife आप क्यों लड़ रहे हो? तो वो बोला, महिला बोली, the woman said, कि ये यहाँ इसको 25 लाख मिलना था, यहाँ पर 25 लाख रुपया मिलना था, ये कहीं भागना चाहता हमको छोड़ करके, ये बोल रहा है कि इसको हॉस्पिटल का लोग इसको सिर्फ 1 लाख रुपया दिया है. The women, the couple, when they had gone from Siliguri, they were told that they will get 25 for giving the kidney. 25 lakhs, and they were taken to, after 1 month in hospitalization, the day the man was left off and tickets were given to him of the train tickets, the wife thought that he has taken the 25 lakhs and he is just saying that हमको तो 1 लाख रुपया मिला है. So she thought that he is now trying to abandon me because he has got lot of money. So they fought there. So the police found out why they were fighting, and the whole case was investigated, and lot of doctors, Apollo Hospital, few doctors from the Kolkata hospital, and some people here were in Siliguri were arrested, found out. But since there were a lot of very senior doctors involved, the case, is just pending. It has not been completely investigated. But the kidney was taken off and the person was only provided 1 lakh rupees. In that 1 lakh, the wife's cost of in the hotel were deducted, and they got very few rupees. Though a lot of arrest happened, and the doctor in Apollo and the nursing staff of Apollo were also arrested, but nothing happened. So it's again $1 million industry of kidney rackets and everything. You must be seeing that all the rich people get the kidney, but poor don't get it. So it's also, exploitation is also deception and lurement in providing this kidney. So all this crime happens. As people who are working with law enforcement across the country, we are aware as to the dimension of the crime which happens. So we should be very clear. Exploitation shall mean physical exploitation, especially पुलिस वालों के लिए. आप लोग जो पुलिस के ऑफिसर हैं, साहब, फिजिकल एक्सप्लॉयटेशन में भी अगर बच्चे को सेक्सुअल नहीं हुआ और उसके साथ मार पिटाई हुआ, उसको कन्फाइन करके रखा, 10 डेज से भी ज़्यादा कन्फाइनमेंट हुआ, उसको ग्रीवियस हर्ट हुआ है, उसके बाद भी उसको मारा पीटा करके काम कराया जा रहा है, तो इट विल बी 370 IPC if the child has been removed from the lawful guardian. Clear है ना? In cases of child labor also, where you find all this exploitation which is happening, you can include child labor, 370 IPC. In cases of bonded labor, lot of people from villages, entire families are transported to Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Karnataka, all these places. Why? To work in brick kilns. They are not paid minimum wages, they are not paid anything, they are made to work 24 hours a day. The entire family, the child also, everyone works. So in this case also, what we can prove is physical exploitation. If physical exploitation is there, and the family has been lured there to work, it will be 370 IPC. Clear, eh? So we need to, the law is very clear on all of this. And as I said, that well-drafted law, and I was talking about these girls, young girls who elope, and then they face the defense counsels, and in these the defense counsels say that it is consent. That is why the second line was added in the law. The consent of the victim is immaterial in determination of the offense of trafficking. This is a very strong line. Only cases of children, consent is immaterial. But putting consent, ruling out consent in IPC section is really well drafted law, because in human trafficking, many parents send these children with consent. Many families send their young girls to work with consent. And police will always come back to these families and say that you send this child, you are also part of the trafficking racket. This is why this whole section was included. Even if it is consent, the police has to investigate the exploitation, and section 370 IPC can be included. The judicial officer will not be concerned whether the child had consented or the family had consented. They will be concerned on exploitation which happened. So with this line, the hands of the law enforcement had been strengthened. Earlier, if consent was there, the police would say, "Arey, ye to apne aap gaye the, sir, hum kya kar sakte hain?" But now they can't say. So this is what is 370 IPC. You know, if police officers go through this section properly and understand word by word, you will understand the dynamics, the extent, and the organized nature of crime of human trafficking. So I hope with this, all of you can always explain. If a police officer is here, he can go and talk to his juniors and teach him what is human trafficking. Bata paoge na? Ji. So that is, we need to understand, and we have to very clearly say, it is not only sex trafficking, it is all these things. And last thing which I just left out was, in 1994 Supreme Court in PUDR versus Union of India had said that anyone who is made to do forced labor, who is made to do work and is not being paid the minimum wages, is forced labor. And forced labor, someone is made to do forced work, it is exploitation. So law of Supreme Court has evolved over the times, but since it was not in the IPC, law enforcement would not understand, and therefore 370 IPC is here, and now it is very important. You can understand. Can you go to the third slide, please? Forms of trafficking. Next. इसके बाद next. Yes, I don't know whether you can see. Forms of trafficking में domestic labor, other forms of labor, forced marriages. You know, there is a lot of trafficking happening for forced marriages. In Haryana, Punjab, Western UP. In Haryana, Punjab, Western UP, Maharashtra, people have killed their girls in feticide. Due to various societal reasons, the sex ratio has gone down to 700 girls to 1,000 men in all these places. Though the government today claims that we are getting, the sex ratio is now okay, they are doing it at birth because of the strict implementation of PCPNDT Act now. The government reports in these states that we are getting the sex ratio is okay. But the sex ratio which is not naturally, which is stabilized at 1,000 to 1,000, more girls, lesser amount of boys. In Kerala, it is naturally more girls and lesser amount of boys. Due to large scale feticide which happened in all these patriarchal states of Haryana, Punjab, millions of girls were killed in the fetus. And till today, and it will take another 50 years for the sex ratio to stabilize. So there is a huge demand of marriageable age girls in these places. So what they do is, they come to West Bengal, they come to the Bihar, many cases from Duars areas. Duars, the Jalpaiguri region has been affected with huge amount of trafficking. So many cases from there, many cases from Darjeeling, we have reported where they have been taken to Haryana. And there, after the girls are procured through agents, they are sold to marriage. And if young children and girls becomes commodities and they are sold and resold, the exploitation you can imagine which may happen. So there is a huge demand of marriageable age girls, the social issue of having more sons in this patriarchal state has led to trafficking of young girls from all these northeastern and eastern states and southern states. And in Haryana, Punjab, you go to many villages, you will find girls from across the country. In shelter home in Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, you will go, you will find lot of girls from different places, Darjeeling, in northeast, all of these who are rescued from such forced marriages. So this demand is huge. In Haryana, it is a political issue. You can't rescue a girl from these places if she has been forcefully married. The entire panchayat comes and stand. I have had several cases investigated of West Bengal police and Assam police. Assam police, and especially, and there is a set amount of pattern. Lot of girls from this Kokrajhar area, there is a tribal community, Kokrajhar area, there a lot of these girls are trafficked to Haryana from Kokrajhar. So, you see, traditionally, the young girls would be kidnapped from traffickers, used to do it from Nepal and West Bengal and Bihar. But over the years, once law enforcement starts strict action in one place, they move the crime to other place where law enforcement is not so aware about the crime. So Assam has faced a huge amount of cases of trafficking of girls for forced marriages, trafficking for adoption, trafficking for the purpose of begging, trafficking for organ donation. So all of this are part of the trafficking. Next slide, please. ये आगे बढ़ते जाइए. I have discussed all of this. Yes. So criminal networks are taking advantage of absence of rule of law as far as trafficking is concerned. Very few police officers are aware about the complexities of human trafficking. Many times victims are arrested, and in cases of prostitution where young girls are trafficked from these places, sometimes the entire brothel is raided and all of them are arrested. Many of the victims are also turned into accused in these raids, and therefore many times the victims also get arrested. There is very poor resources to care for victims, lack of access to justice for victims. There is no one to fight these cases. I will talk about this. Lack of punishment, which makes trafficking a high profit, because traffickers know that the organized crime will never be investigated. This is fueling the entire trafficking crime in the country, because they know that they will not be punished, the entire trafficking racket will not be investigated, access to justice is missing, no one will help the poor girl. Even after a girl is rescued from a brothel area, and after 2-3 years of exploitation, the girl is sent back to Sundarban, and from there in the courts, the day she is brought before to depose, she will not remember anything, and before she comes to the court, the traffickers will threaten her, and the family is very poor. So they are made first to take money, and if they don't take money, their loved ones will be threatened, and therefore the girls will come and become hostile in the court and will not remember the crime or not identify the accused, and things will. So the rule of law, the traffickers know that they will get away with the crime, and therefore at organizations like Kailash Satyarthi Children Foundation, organizations like Shakti Vahini, when we rescue these girls, victims, we stand by them till the end of the journey. For us, rehabilitation means that the victim should get a sense of justice. Till she does not get a sense of justice, rehabilitation of the victim cannot happen. And therefore, we are there with the victims in their court trials, in monitoring the traffickers. If the victim is threatened, we at once file FIRs. We try to provide them with witness protection, since there is a Supreme Court judgment now on witness protection. We are trying to get all these protection to victims. Sometimes we just remove the victim from that place till the victim is, in a safer situations. So traffickers employ all tactics to get away with the law. The police, what happens is that the IO has investigated the case. Sometime after that, the IO has got transferred. So no one is there to help the victim. And therefore, we as an organization, we are there. We handhold the victim. And in many cases, in which we monitor the entire trial, we are seeing convictions happening. So to break the organized crime, to fight against the traffickers, it's a big long battle in the courts, outside the courts, and also providing rehabilitation support to the victim. Nowadays, the government of India as well as various state governments have come up, and this has not happened out of the sky. This happened because in 2009 there was an amendment in the CRPC which brought the entire, jurisprudence on crime against women and children, and in other crimes also. The focus shifted in 2009 on the victims. And now the entire jurisprudence of various high courts, Supreme Court, you must be seeing that Supreme Court and high courts and various constitutional courts are much inclined toward victims. And they propounded the issue of victim compensation. First time Supreme Court did it in a girl of Bangladesh, Chandrima Das. Many law students must have read about that case. So slowly the victim jurisprudence has come in the courts, and nowadays we have a very strong connect of victim compensation. POCSO law also talks about immediate assistance, compensation, support persons, because many traffic victims are victims of POCSO also. So the entire legal framework, the Juvenile Justice Act, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, in cases of bonded labor, child labor, the entire focus of these laws are on the victim, and we have very strong victim compensation schemes now drafted by different states, though on the orders of the Honorable Supreme Court and the Government of India orders, they have been drafted, and nowadays victims are able to access compensation. In cases in which we are monitoring these cases, we are able to get victim compensation, so that strengthens the fight and that empowers the victim to fight against the trafficker. Just imagine, I had just recently, we had appeared in the Supreme Court last month on a case of a 14-year-old girl from West Bengal who was trafficked from West Bengal to Delhi. And the day we raided GB Road, the girl was sent to the Agra brothel. And when we got information, the Bengal team got information that the girl has been shifted to Agra. We went there to Agra, the girl was shifted to Allahabad brothel. And when we again got the information, it was a 15 days, journey. We got that the girl has been sent to Allahabad brothel, and we raided the Allahabad brothels. We could catch hold of the trafficker, but the girl was sent by flight from Lucknow to Silchar in Assam. Finally, the victim was rescued from Silchar. This 14-year-old girl, and that was in 2018, this case. So the police officer was very good, and he has ensured 3 very high-profile traffickers behind jail since that time. So, and why I am telling is that you have to understand the position of victim. So these are traffickers who have very lot of money. They filed several bail applications, rejected. Calcutta High Court, 2 bail applications rejected. So they went up to Supreme Court. So there is a provision in the law that in cases of sexual assault of cases and young girls, the victim lawyers should be heard. That is now a provision. But we found out that they filed the bail in Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court issued notice without asking about why the lawyers for the victim are not present. And the day the bail application was getting decided, we came to know, the police informed the NGO that, sir, the bail application is in Supreme Court. I tried my best in Kolkata High Court, but now it is Supreme Court and I can't go, and we have just sent a report and I don't know what my government counsel will do. Please help. So at once we got the wakalatnama of the minor girl's father in the night. The day the bail was being heard, we appeared in the court and said that we are appearing on behalf. And there, if we had not appeared, the trafficker would have got bail. So it is so important that the fight is, as I say, that in cases of human trafficking, the law enforcement should be ready for a long haul. And that is why the role of NGOs in this crime is very important. Presently, in many states where there are not good NGOs, because at Kailash Satyarthi Children Foundation or Bachpan Bachao Andolan or Shakti Mahini, these are in some places, but many places you don't know. But the reliable organizations are organizations now who are running child lines in all these districts of the country. They are supported by the Ministry of Women and Child. They are running these child lines, and you can rely on these NGOs to provide victim the support. Traffickers should know that the victim has the support of the social welfare department, the NGOs. Then the fight becomes victim fight becomes easy. Otherwise, the victim will appear. And just imagine, I know there are judicial officers. If you are not a lawyer or a legal person, and if you appear, though Sikkim courts may not be so congested, if you appear in 30 Hazari, you will not know what is happening in the court. A general person will not know. Someone is just asking the person, and the PP is asking question, someone is noting down, and there is lot of crowd. You don't know. So victims don't get a sense of security when they appear because of the huge crowds and everything, and they appear, though many cases they are in camera happens, cross and examination in chief, but victim doesn't understand the working of the courts, and the victim gets intimidated. And if we have a stiff judicial officer, the victim is further gets afraid, and just, during her cross-examination, she will just, forget things. So, what we do is that we ensure that the public prosecutor meets the victim one day before. We don't, as our NGOs, if we have rescued the child, we don't do, on the day of the examination and cross-examination, we ensure that a legal aid lawyer is provided to the victim who arranges the interview, and the NGO who had rescued does not appear in the court or speaks to the victim, because in cases where a lot of trafficking cases happen, the lawyers, defense lawyers ask, did you meet the NGO who rescued you? What did they taught you today? What did they tell you? They have all these stock questions they know. So we don't meet. We are now the fight. We have fought it for many years. So it is the Dalsa lawyer arranges the meeting with the public prosecutor. The public prosecutor meets the girl. If that meeting happens, the court next day happens it goes very good. Things happen, the victim deposes, the victim gets confidence. But if the victim suddenly, there is no one to help her, and she comes from West Bengal to depose in Delhi, she will be afraid. If no one is there to help, her name will be called, she will be blank, no question asked, and the trafficker lawyers will be, not one lawyer, but a bunch of lawyers with lot of files with red and blue marks. The victim get intimated that what it is. Might be they are going to arrest me today for the crime. So it is so intimidating situations that over the years the Supreme Court has now given the vulnerable witness program, which is now happening in many courts now. So that is how this vulnerable witness thing has evolved, because we could fight for these victims. So who are the traffickers? As I have discussed: recruiters, sellers, buyers, transporters, conspirators, customers, pimps, brothel madam, brothel managers, financiers, parents and guardians who knowingly sell their children. So there are so many of these people who are doing this. Profiling traffickers, offenders in sex trafficking crimes include all persons, agencies, institutions involved in the act of process of trafficking who gains. Okay, is there. Next slide. Oh, yes, that is there. And the next slide you can see things to remember. Traffickers have already played with the mind. These are another challenges of traffic victims. Traffickers have already played with the mind of the girl. The girl has already developed a dependency on the trafficker. She trusts the trafficker and is also emotionally attached. You know the Stockholm syndrome, many of you must be knowing, in which you develop affinity with your exploiter because he offers you good food. Though he exploits you, he offers you, he talks with you very politely, so you develop an affinity. So when you depose in the court, you will always have that affinity. That is called Stockholm syndrome. So victims tend to start, trusting more. She has a sense of gratitude to traffickers, have told that her family is being well supported, which is false. They are being taken care of. They send them money regularly, and if she continues to do what the trafficker says, her family will be looked well. So this is a minor girl or a girl of 18, 19 years. She is told that you continue in the brothel, your family is being sent money. Though she does not have any contact with the family, the traffickers say that we are sending the money to your family. The girl, thinks that, okay, so if I am doing, even if the money is reaching my family, so I will be doing. So she is thankful to the traffickers. Though in truth, when she comes out and rescued, she then realizes that not a single penny has reached her family. Traffickers have already told the girl that the police will beat them up, put them in jail. So this brainwashing happens on all victims of human trafficking. First thing is put as much poison against the NGOs. That NGOs will rescue you, they will put you behind jail. Police wala will rescue you, take from here. You are already involved in this crime, police will put you in jail. And for the victim, I and you can understand what is a shelter home. Victim does not understand what is shelter home. Even if she is sent to a Nari Niketan or a children's home, she finds that she is being put in lock and key and therefore thinks that she has been arrested. So she thinks that the trafficker had said right, that they will put me behind bars. So this brainwashing becomes very difficult, and victims don't talk about all the crimes which happen, and they are very apprehensive of giving statements. So when we as practitioners work on these crimes, we tend to delay the first statement and we don't take these statements. We tell the police not to take the statement till the victim has been properly counseled and made aware that she has been rescued. She will be provided medical support, she will be provided family support, she will be provided compensation and all of that. Traffickers also told these girls, NGOs will come and rescue you. They are no good, they will take all your belongings, and all the brainwashing happens, and therefore victims don't have the sense of security with NGOs and police also. And you know what the police persons do? they turned to the NGO and said that victim तो कुछ बोल नहीं रही है साहब, आप ही बोलते थे कि ट्रैफिकिंग हुआ है. Victim तो कुछ नहीं बोल रही हो, तो बोल रही है अपने मर्जी से यहाँ पर है. So you understand how difficult it is to work in this crime, especially for police officers. The victim is not deposing, though the officer knows that it is trafficking. Her statement of 164 does not talk about lurement, does not talk about exploitation. So it becomes very difficult, even though the officer knows it. वो जानता है कि ये crime है, पर victim उसका help नहीं करती है. इसलिए it is very important that we undertake counseling, proper counseling, and do the questioning with the victim properly. And we need to ask the victim, and that is why with good police officers, we get lot of convictions. I know hundreds of police officers who do great amount of work. And though we are very critical of the police, but let me tell you that police does not do this, police, general public, media is also very critical, but we are in the government. No police officer, I don't know of any police officer who gets reimbursement if he goes for a case in Delhi. Suppose Sikkim police go, I don't know about Sikkim police, I know about West Bengal police, Jharkhand police. When they go to investigate a girl trafficked in Punjab, they only get railway warrants from the department, which gives them the tickets. We fought a lot with various state governments to get them Rajdhani tickets. Otherwise, they were used to get in the local trains, the general trains. Now they get the railway tickets, they go to Punjab, they have no vehicles there, the local police does not help. So the police person, the IO, who has a big team with him, 4 or 5 people, juniors, they go, they take hotels, they incur a lot of payments, they rescue the child, they arrest the perpetrator, सबका टिकट कटाओ, वहाँ पर ट्रांजिट बेल लो, ट्रांजिट रिमांड लो, उसमें भी लॉयर लो, सब कुछ करने के बाद the IO comes back and finds out that he has spent more than 80,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, and he has nowhere to take claim. Though senior officers may say that we get claim, they get claim, but I have not found a single officer who gets the claim. So they tend to remain silent, and they do. So hats off to many police officers who have done these investigations out of their own pockets. I filed RTI applications to all states as to amount of money paid on cases of rape, on the money paid to IOs on investigating case of outstation sexual assault, outstation trafficking. And no state gave me a right answer. They first tried to play the, that we don't have data. I went into appeals, and even in the CIC, we got orders, and then finally we got that zero expenditure. So, I am part of Nodal officers meeting of Ministry of Home Affairs, where all Nodal officers are there, and we are called. I told to the Joint Secretary that, Madam, a lot of these investigations happen by the police from their own pockets, and some policemen also are innovative. They take the money from the victim parents of the entire team. 50-70 हज़ार आपका बच्चा गुम हुआ, चलो हम खोजते हैं. You pay the money of not the travel, वहाँ का होटल और उसका ये वो, which the victim parents tell us that I have paid this money to the. So where is sense of justice? Where is justice? Justice is only 5-letter word, but it has strong implications on the budgets, on the way the police responds. These are some of the things. We don't offer money for investigating for our law enforcement officers. Nirbhaya case, we spent lakhs of rupees just to do forensics from United States on the tooth marks on the body of the victim. But do we pay those amount in all the rape cases which happen? No. So this is the situation of investigation, and that is why we are always there with the police. I know if a good officer wants to do it, a honest police officer wants to do it, he will face lot of difficulties. Let me tell you. In case of human trafficking, these policemen are really against the mountain. They have to do it, no one pays them. So, we have to understand the difficult situation, and as people who are there in policies, as people who are there in, many of you may turn into policy maker one day, do think about all these things. If we want to get a sense of justice for victims, we need to put in money. The state needs to put in money. Nowadays, though PILs are not being entertained in the Supreme Court more often, but I think there will be a time when such things will be entertained and things will happen out properly. But we have fought, since the missing children case, we have fought like anything in various high courts and Supreme Court to ensure that the state does its responsibilities. The joint secretaries and the secretaries who sit on these big budgets will never realize the amount of pain the victim goes through. This is what I have learned from thousands of cases we have intervened. And this is good because, getting such an august gathering of people who are in the entire justice system, especially I have done a lot of reach out to the judicial officers across various judicial academies. When we talk about these things and when judicial officers know, they know all these things, and it is very important when they decide these cases, it is very important to have this contextual things, which is not on the charge sheet, but the context of the crime. When these people, when people in key position understand, things often turn out to be on the brighter side for the victim. So things to remember: trafficker use their network to scare the girls with threat to harm her family. Many cases, threats happen. Traffickers try to become benevolent well-wishers. Traffickers threaten NGOs who have rescued the girls. They often use media to shame the organization, brand them as traffickers. For the judicial officers, I'll tell you, NGOs do a lot of work, When these are young people from tribal areas, the Jharkhand and especially the tribals working in the tea states, they don't understand Hindi. So, the victim can one day come and depose before the court that NGO helped me but offered me money. They can say that. Why? The NGO had talked about victim compensation. And the tribal girl, while deposing, may say that the NGO offered me money, which the judicial officer will be very alarmed while hearing. In terms of the work NGOs do, we have to be very careful. When the victim is illiterate, the victim family is illiterate, it is a double sword situation. In one of the cases in which my 4 young girls in my organization, Shakti Vaini, had rescued a girl from a trafficking situation. The victim had talked about sexual exploitation, and these were all 4 young college girls out from the college, 2 from Campus Law Center, 1 from Amity Law School, and 1 was from Jamia School of Social Work. They had been the part of the rescue team, and the victim, after 4 years when she came, her mother had received some money, and they said that the 4 girls who were there had told me to label the allegation of sexual assault. And the court just, came, the entire might of the criminal law came against that 4 girls. And we had to fight for more than 10 years to get them off from that case. When we could prove, it was such a big fight, we had to prove that the IO was in connivance with the accused. The IO had traveled to Kokrajhar to do investigation on the minor girl was from Kokrajhar. The IO had traveled with the accused family. The IO had booked the air tickets from the money taken from the credit card of the accused family. When we could investigate, when we could prove all these things through RTI, and when you are honest, you will get good officers. So we got a very good police officer who was the vigilance chief, And she told us that she will investigate. And she investigated everything and could prove the entire connivance. The IO was suspended and everything turned out. And the 4 victims now, though the entire evidence has been submitted in the court, the girls are still, the court has not yet decided the charges of 193 read with 340 CRPC, 195 read with 340, because they cannot decide 340 application in the court. It's still pending. Though evidence has come out and no judge is ready, because in 340 CRPC 195, judges have to file the complaint of perjury and no one is ready, and still it is pending. So the NGOs have also to do very difficult. It's a very, working in this is very dangerous. And from that time onwards, we have, and all these 4 have now become very good people, good lawyers. Someone is a good person, but they are facing this case. So this can happen. Traffickers act as close relatives, parents to seek court orders to meet the girls in shelter home. Lot of things happen. Sometimes fake parents appear, and that is why the role of the Child Welfare Committee is important. Sometimes courts send the victims to the shelter home by court order. In all cases of children, the appropriate agency is the Child Welfare Committee, because in cases in courts, accused lawyers on behalf of accused, lawyers masquerading as the victims' lawyers on behalf of parents can appear and argue. But in front of the Child Welfare Committee, it is on the CWC only entertains the parents of the child, and that too after the home investigation report. So it is very important that CWCs are provided this. So this is what is all about the organized crime of human trafficking. I hope I have been able to convey to you the entire crime, and though I don't rely much on PPTs, but especially with our own experiences of working on this crime against human trafficking for many, many years, we have been able to give sense of justice to many children. And let me tell you that if you find out a missing child and restore that child to the family, the happiness you get is nothing as compared to the danger situations we face. The victims whom we rescue from dire situations, very recently, I'll just give you an example of how much anger is amongst us who work on human trafficking. Recently, the West Bengal Commission of Protection of Child on Facebook in August had said that Shakti Mahini is blacklisted in West Bengal. It was just a Facebook post. Why? Because officers of Shakti Mahini, social workers were arguing with the police rudely. When you don't see justice happening, when you see that state governments are just lacking that commitment, victims have no one to help, we tend to get angry. We have to get angry. It is not about whether we are rude or not. We have to be talking about justice. This cannot happen to any child, the crime of human trafficking. No one can be sold, no one can be purchased. And in this India, no, it should not happen. So, people like us are always angry. Why? The situation from where we see victims. And why should we not be angry? Please end this PPT and please click on the Gurugram. This is what makes us angry. देखिए गुरुग्राम करिए, इसको नीचे कर दीजिए, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड, नेक्स्ट पीपीटी. इसको डाउन करके इन द फोल्डर. नो, दिस इज नॉट द. We was rescued just 10 days back in Gurugram from a domestic maid and just see the amount of violation. Just please इसको आगे बढ़ाते जाइए. Lot of burn marks. The child was being made. You can just read the news. This was a young child from Simdega. Next. Child was never given food on plates. She was always given food on the floor. कान इसका देखिए, इतना मरोड़ मरोड़ के कान को ये कर दिया था. This makes us angry because it's a live case. You can read it about Gurgaon maid case. Just 10 days back it happened, and the amount of exploitation sometimes we see was difficult. We have now sent her to Simdega. She is now there with her in the district hospital. The CM has provided support. But sometimes when we see such type of exploitation, that is what makes us angry. So thank you so much. I think we can break for lunch.
Yes.
And then in the next session we can have some question answers and we'll just wind up. Thank you so much. Spoken about welcome back from the lunch, and I do hope that with a good meal, but I'll keep you all awake for some time more. Though I had a very long presentation, I'll give this copy of the presentation to the director sir, who can circulate it to everyone. Your office can circulate it because it had all the provisions of the law and all the things. Some of the few things rest, which is still I would like to discuss, is for every missing child, please register FIRs, Supreme Court order. Whenever there is a case of human trafficking or victim going missing, please send the information to outside agencies very soon, don't delay. Many times delay is detrimental, or if there are any leads, register the case and at once. In cases of missing children, time is very important. For human trafficking cases, interstate collaboration is very important. Sikkim police should work with different other police agency, and similarly other police agency should work with Sikkim police, and there are very good few police officers who have worked on these cases and they are well aware, and they are aware of the challenges of going in different states and not getting the support. So for human trafficking, it is very important that interstate collaboration is important. Please ensure that all social legislations like Juvenile Justice Act, Bonded Labor Act, Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, as well as other social legislations have the role of NGOs inbuilt within the legislation. Juvenile Justice Act, all these social legislation have the role of NGOs and civil society. Please develop good organizations in your districts so that they can be able to help you in all these cases. And there are a lot of mandatory committees which require to be formed under the law. In terms of bonded labor, we should have the Vigilance Committee. In terms of Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, we should have a social board, advisory board of social workers who should be working with the police agencies to monitor such cases. The crime of prostitution continues to be an area of concern, and though, as I have earlier said, that Sikkim has reported very less amount of trafficking, but still post-pandemic situations can lead to lot of young people getting trafficked, because when red light areas were closed during the COVID pandemic, since we work in these cases, during the lockdown, all the red light areas like Kamatipura, GB Road, and all of these places across the country were closed for 1.5 years. So what happened, and still many of them were not able to open up because police did not allow them. So what happened was that during the lockdown, And this is how we should understand how the trafficking, the criminals, how do they work. When the brothels got closed due to COVID pandemic, they evolved into spa and massage services and massage parlors, spa services and friendship clubs across the country. Earlier, spa services and massage parlors were found only in some metropolitan cities. But nowadays you can go to A cities, B cities and C cities. Smaller towns, you have all these massage parlors and spa services available. Earlier these were mostly found in Goa and other places, but now even small towns like Agra, Aligarh, all of these places are having lot of these spa services and massage parlors. What I mean to say is that the demand of prostitution is always for young girls and young adults who are there. So the business demands young people and the customer demands younger girls, and therefore there is going to be a huge demand being created by these A class, B class, C class cities, spa and massage services. Though raids and legal actions are happening, but they are now, since it is a spa and massage parlors, they are running without any fear within the malls, within the shopping complexes, and the whole red light area is simply vanished, and all of these massage parlor and spa services are operating. So now they have respect, they are running massage parlor, the police can't intervene without a proper information, and it is becoming very difficult to intervene, because since they say that we are adults, whatever we do, and there are different other Supreme Court cases which have, especially the Bar Girls Mumbai case, which Supreme Court said that if in 5-star hotels it can run the Bar Girls, why not in the other hotels? So it was allowed. So the demand created by spa and massage parlors and other spa services is going to be a major, creating a huge demand. We know that lot of girls from Northeast and Mizoram, Northeast, Manipur have been trafficked to many of these places in tourism sector. So we have to be vigilant. Though cases have been reported very less, we should continue to be vigilant, especially Sikkim police, you have lesser amount of cases, so that should not lead you to complacency, but I think it should lead you for better action and vigilance. Vigilance is required, because if there is a plug in, plug out from in any other state, they may target this state also. So this is something which is good. We have very good officers of Sikkim police who can monitor this situation. Please keep a watch on all the placement agencies and recruitment agencies operating in Sikkim. Ensure that they are registered, and even police investigation in these cases or local information generated can be a big preventive efforts. So Sikkim should focus more on prevention and see that traffickers don't find this place as a state from where trafficking to happen. But as I said, that human trafficking does not happen with only the poor or the poverty stricken. It can happen to any strata, any education level, and we are seeing very big cases where girls from colleges have been blackmailed into prostitution due to all these things which traffickers play in these big cities. Drugs combined with prostitution, combined with blackmailing of pictures, and all of this can lead to young college going girls into this trade, and they are forced into this. So, and we have got several of these cases. So these are areas of concern which you should certainly ensure that we maintain vigilance. Also in cases of children child protection system, especially the Child Welfare Committee, the District Child Protection Unit, and all of this should be working properly. They should be sensitized to the issue of human trafficking. The district legal services authorities have to also play a big role in the fight against human trafficking. As I have said, that since 2009 onwards, Supreme Court, I have found in many cases, is leaning on the role of the district legal services authorities. So DALSA can play a major role, especially in monitoring the implementation of the laws in their district, also visiting the shelter homes, if any, to find out how they are working, to providing compensation to victims of crime, to maintaining a list of paralegal volunteers. I hope in the Sikkim also you have appointed PLVs, paralegal volunteers, who are people who can visit these places, and every police station should have a paralegal volunteer. Though it was a Supreme Court judgment and it is not being implemented in many states, so we are now in a PIL in Supreme Court to get it implemented. The role of the appointment of PLVs for every police station, because for the general people, PLVs can play a big role as a mechanism to reach out to the police agencies. So paralegal volunteers can be very important, and Supreme Court in its missing case judgment of Bachpan Bachao Andolan has also relied on PLVs. So PLVs can play with the amount of reliance which the Honorable Supreme Court of India is putting on the system of paralegal volunteers. This is something which can be strengthened as a prevention effort. If we have good PLVs in various places, we can have lot of inputs and information coming to the police. So legal services authorities can play a big role in terms of victim support, in terms of compensation, even in sexual assault cases. I don't know the amount of POXO cases which is getting reported, but in POXO also, the district legal services authorities have to be have a role to play, and appointment of support persons which the Child Welfare Committee does. So all this, the law has lot of things. The only thing is implementation of the law. So in other states where the problems are huge, we are really getting lot of support from legal services authority, district legal services authorities, and the appointment as member secretaries and people who manage the DSLSA in the district. Judicial officers also get lot of experience in dealing with such issues, because as a judicial officers, many of you remain behind, you don't come into the forefront, but your appointment into the district legal services authority gives you a lot of opportunities for reaching out to the community and learning about all these cases and exploitation, and therefore it is the DSLSA can really play a good role, monitoring of the child welfare committees and all of that. So the law has all these things. The only thing is convergence among all district agencies. The compensation of many of these cases the money is paid by the state agencies. The compensation is processed by the legal services authorities, and the courts have provide compensation. So there are several bodies within the district which needs to be, so convergence of all agencies is required. Human trafficking is an organized crime, and we should ensure also that we also get organized in terms of providing support to victims of sexual assault, or victims of crime, victims of trafficking. So I had a long presentation, but I will give it to the Honorable Director Sir, who can circulate it to you all. I have some other small, though on the vulnerable witnesses also I had a lot of things to say, but I'll talk about some of the, especially law students and also lawyers who are here. There is a vulnerable witness guidelines which has been issued by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, and various high courts have also, further issued it. The Vulnerable Witness Guidelines has lot of details as to how to provide support to victims of sexual assault, victims of trafficking, victims who are vulnerable, and I also have that presentation, so I will provide it to the director of the Judicial Academy, who can, because that defines the vulnerable witness judgment of Supreme Court, defines who is a vulnerable witness, like any child victim or witness who has not completed 18 years of age, any victim who is an offence victim under the POCSO Act, any victim who is who has suffered offences under rape and sexual offences, any person with disability, any who is a vulnerable witness, any person suffering from mental illness. So it has lot of things. Even the witness protection scheme or the vulnerable witness program talks about the Mahendra Chawla judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, in which witness protection scheme was provided. I don't know whether Sikkim has drafted a witness protection law, but still there is the Supreme Court judgment which can help you in providing protection to witnesses. Even the Vulnerable Witness Guidelines defines who is the support person as envisaged in POCSO law, and also various guidelines to define the best interest of the child while the child in court premises, and it also talks about how the in-camera proceeding should happen, concealment of identity of witnesses, definition of comfort items, how the victim can be provided comfort. Like it talks about, comfort items means any article choice of vulnerable witness which may have a calming effect at the time of the deposition. So the Supreme Court, and though it was first drafted by the Delhi High Court, and then it got support from Supreme Court, but it's a complete guidelines are there. Please read that guidelines, especially lawyers who can get it implemented, and of course the judicial officers are there who are there to implement it. So we should also, and also another important point, during the COVID pandemic, though we have now become very used to video conference guidelines and video conference as a way to depose, and many cases nowadays are getting deposed through video conferencing and through the video conference link. So if a girl is trafficked from Sikkim and has to depose in Mumbai, she does not have to travel to Mumbai again. She can be in this under the Vulnerable Witness Program. It provides a platform where the girl can come to the Dalsa here, and the district authorities will arrange the link and her witness can happen. So lot of new things are there which can really help the victim. The victims don't need to travel to those places. So this is something which has evolved, and though the judgment came very early, but pandemic taught us all about video conferencing. Otherwise the judgment was there, Dr. Praful Desai versus State of Maharashtra, but now it is the part and parcel. So nowadays even victims from Nepal and Bangladesh, in Delhi we are getting them, we are getting them examined through video conferencing. So we can, all these things are there for protection of the victim. So my last few lines again, please remain vigilant. Though Sikkim does have very few cases, and there are missing cases, sporadic cases of prostitution also are reported. We have dealt with few cases of Sikkim, and but we need to be vigilant, especially with these recruitment agencies who send people abroad, with the placement agencies who are sending people for employment. Please keep a watch on them, and that is how we can prevent human trafficking. So this is all I had to say. Since I have been talking since morning, if you have any questions, I would like to answer them. Otherwise, we can end it here. But if you have any questions, please ask any questions. JJ Act में there is a mechanism called home investigation report. Social background report is for victims, for children who commit crime, and home investigation report is for children who are victims of crime. So कहीं पर भी बच्चे को वापस भेजने के पहले चाइल्ड वेलफेयर कमेटी के थ्रू ही भेजना चाहिए. मान लीजिए आज पुलिस ने आज एक बच्ची को रेस्क्यू किया. Sometimes we see police themselves restore it to the family. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. Any child who is in need of care and protection, is a missing child, has been found after going through exploitation. Any child who is found in these situations, they should be restored through the Child Welfare Committee. Under the JJ Act, किसी भी बच्चे को घर भेजने के पहले होम इन्वेस्टिगेशन रिपोर्ट जरूरी है. In cases where we have found in other states, in cases where we have found the involvement of the parents, in these cases we never send back the child to the family. We always restore them to the shelter homes, and from there the best interest of the child is decided. But JJ Act provides the provision for such cases. Also in POCSO cases, where the victim has suffered incest within the family, in which the exploitation has happened within the family, there is a provision in the Sexual Offences Act law also that victim will not be restored to the homes. And in all cases of incest and victim suffering home, the CWC decides where the child has to go. बच्चे को कहाँ जाना है वो बाल कल्याण समिति decide करेगी. So the law has that framework. The only thing is that we should explore that law.